and then she'll give us, oh, there you go.
Ready?
Good to go.
Okay, welcome everybody. It is 5:03 and we will be calling, I'm calling the Hāmākua Community Development Plan Action Committee meeting to order. First, I'm going to start off with the roll. Wait, okay. Okay, I'm going to, hey Alexis, this is Brad. You want me to start off with the all that the coronavirus stuff first?
Yes, you can start with that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll read my script. Now, anyway, so because of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 emergency and state and federal guidance on large meetings or gatherings, and pursuant to the mayor's proclamation regarding COVID-19, the CDP Action Committee meetings will be held online until further notice. And members of the public may watch the CDP Action Committee meetings live online. People are doing that on the YouTube. Is it YouTube? Yeah. And then the minutes of the Action Committee meetings will be transcribed and posted on the Planning Department's website. And just a quick reminder about our Aloha etiquette, which pertains also to our virtual meetings. And we'd like one person to speak at a time. Please mute your device unless speaking. And then please raise your hand virtually or physically and wait for recognition by the chair before speaking. And remember to speak slowly and clearly into your mic. Sometimes we have slower speed for uploads for these virtual meetings. With that, I'm going to call roll. Nikki Hubbard. Carol Ignacio. Hello. Okay. Tom Kinney. I guess I'm not hearing anybody. Are there, no one's there?
Here.
Oh, okay. Crystal Kua.
Here.
Okay, Jeff McKnight.
Present.
Robert Nishimoto.
Here.
Rhonda Pollard.
Here.
And myself. The next item is the additions to the agenda. Now, do we have any additions to the agenda? And if so, then we're going to require at least 6 votes to amend it. I'm not aware of any.
I have a question though.
Go ahead.
Okay, you know, there was a meeting, a virtual meeting, maybe a week ago that was between a community group here, I think centered in Hāmākua, and the planning department. Heather was there. And so I'm wondering if the 2 members of the planning committee, or excuse me, 2 members of the CDP Action Committee who attended that meeting are going to need to give a report on that meeting.
Yeah, we can do that in the announcements. Yeah.
It's actually agendized under agenda item number 4A.
Okay,
Okay, so yeah, we'll cover that, Tom.
Yep.
thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not aware of any additions to the agenda. Anybody else? Keiko or Alexis or you guys from
No.
planning side?
We didn't receive any requests either.
Right, right. Okay, moving on to announcements. Keiko, I'm going to turn over to you for the I guess the first one is the Action Committee meeting dates for the
Sure.
remainder of 2021. Half a year left.
Half a year left.
Yes.
And so back in December when we met, I think when we proposed the schedule for quarterly meetings, We had just kind of hit these first 2 quarterly meetings, kind of reaching out to you folks and seeing when we could get quorum. And so we're trying to set a more set schedule so that everybody can get it on their calendars and we don't have to worry so much about folks' availability. And so for the next upcoming one is going to be August 12, and that's going to be all the ACs together. So it'll be our all AC. And then September 15th and November 16th will be Hāmākua AC meetings. And so we'll get these dates out to you folks too, along with a more detailed calendar as far as when we're going to be posting the agenda, when the minutes are due, when we'll be reaching out to you folks for possible agenda items, those kind of things.
So again, August 12th, all AC,
Mhm.
island-wide, and September 15th and November 16th.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, and Alexis has dropped it into the chat too. And then once we hit November, we'll have the calendar for 2022 for you folks. So we'll be more set on our dates. Any questions about dates, calendar? No? Great. So the next announcement, we've had a lot of questions about the status of the general plan and what's currently going on with it. And so we just have a brief statement to share with you folks, and now it's my turn to read from my script, Brad.
Okay.
And so if you folks remember in 2019, the initial draft was taken out to the public. It was like summer, fall of 2019. And so then 2020 was the work of incorporating comments and creating a second draft. And so currently the administration is reviewing the different components of the general plan. So that includes the 2019 draft, all of the public input that was put forward, and then alternative strategies and opportunities to address the public input. So we don't have a timeline yet, but once the administration has completed their review, then they're going to provide direction and guidance to us as staff. And then as soon as we have an updated timeline as far as when we're coming back out to the public with this next draft, we'll be sure to get that to you folks. Any questions about that?
No timeline. I just wanted, did I hear that right? No timeline?
Not currently. As soon as they're finished with their review and provide us some direction, we'll be able to solidify a timeline.
Is this for planning, or is this for the administration for all departments?
It's planning administration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'd like to ask planning to please hurry up.
I will pass along your note. Thank you.
Okay.
And then just the last update is kind of around staffing. And so you folks see Alexis on Zoom today, and Jeff and Brad have met her while we were going through the formation of the agenda. But so we're excited to have Alexis join our team. She is new to long range, but not new to the planning department. She's been working in Kona as a land use plans checker. And so we're excited to have her transition. She's housed in Kona along with Rob. And so what we're doing in long range is trying to reorganize our activities into kind of 3 main streams. So there's infrastructure and design, which would include Rob and then Natasha Soriano. And then Kamuela, who was also at the last meeting, he and Kevin Sullivan are working in the natural cultural resources kind of stream. And then it's Alexis and I working on community development. And then we're hoping to build our team within the coming months. So you should hopefully see some additional new faces. We have 2 spots that we're trying to fill. So yeah, so that's on our side. And Bethany and April still very much in long range and working hard on kind of that management side. So that was a question of South Kohala. What happened to Bethany? We're like, she's still there. Still there. So any questions around that?
So just to confirm, for dedicated to at least the Hāmākua CDP, it's primarily you, and I know it's a team, but in terms of you being point of contact in the main core planning staff.
Yeah, it's Alexis and I. And
Okay.
so, I mean, that's kind of a big change in that Alexis and I are the main contacts for all of our ACs.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why we're trying to build our team quickly and efficiently.
I see. Okay. All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? No? People you want to refer to work in the long range division with community planning? No. All right. I'll turn it back over to you, Brad.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is public comment on agenda items, and either written testimony was accepted via email or in person at the Hilo Kona Planning Department and up to 2 days prior to the meeting. And in addition, members of the public were able to register to provide oral testimony on agenda items. So the comments are limited to 3 minutes in length per agenda item. We have one person registered to testify tonight. I believe it's Francine Roby. You know what I'm going to do? Since it's just Francine, why don't we hold the testimony until we get into that actual action item instead of some beforehand. I like it just so it flows better and then it's related to what we're discussing. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah, what is the action item that she's addressing?
It's in regard to agenda item number 3, advancing the CDP implementation. I'm not sure exactly what it pertains to, but it may be around, looks like grassroots initiatives relative to the CDP section 5.8, improving recycling and solid waste facilities, specifically green waste. So yeah, so rather than have her testify now, I'm just gonna wait until that actually is brought up and then she can address that and we can have a discussion if necessary.
Francine, are you okay with that? Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. The next item is approval of the draft minutes for March 24, 2021. So if anybody has any particular changes or comments on that, now's the time. And if not, then we can have a motion to adopt that as the final.
I move that it be adopted, and I want to compliment whoever wrote those minutes, or whoever transcribed them. Great job.
I second that motion and comment.
Great. I have one kind of item that I wanted to just sort of clarify, and that is on page 5 under item 4, updates from action committee members. Let's see. I had updated folks on the Hakalau school sort of one. It's in the CDP in terms of trying to get that for a community center for public use. And I mentioned that there was some legislative proposal that never flew. And so right now, we do not have a renewal of our temporary use permit. So I just want to clarify, inability to renew the temporary use permit for Hakalau School. And we are pursuing negotiations directly with DLNR. So just wanted to add that clarification, because it's not like we have a permit per se, it's a temporary use type of 1 year. But they did not renew that. So
Brad, just confirming that that's on the state CDP, not the county CDP. That's correct, correct?
No, it is in our CDP. It is one of.
All right, sorry. I thought you said CIP budget.
No. This is for the. I gave an update on the Hakalau school basically. Yeah, So yeah, that is on the CDP, Hāmākua CDP. Okay, so do I have a motion to adopt the draft meeting minutes with my kind of clarification?
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, so moved by Tom and second by, who was that? Was that,
Nikki.
Nikki. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? So the draft meeting minutes of March 24, 2021 with my clarifications are now yeah, approved as such. And let's see. Okay, the next item of business is item number 1 and action areas for the 2021 and 2022 CDP implementation. So I will turn that over to Keiko and Rob.
Awesome. So just quickly, I think Rob's getting ready to share his screen. And so we just want to clarify some of the things that we've been talking about. And so, of course, you know, we've started this effort so that we could better understand the implementation work that our ACs are doing, so that we can identify shared interests and opportunities to combine efforts. And so I think Councilmember Kimball joining us has really provided a good base. And so as AC members have jumped into kind of her working groups, it's given us this starting place, and then we've kind of combined that with the efforts that you folks identified that you're working on. And so we really, in this agenda item, wanted to just provide a space for you guys to be able to see kind of the picture and be able to have conversations and maybe pull out a little bit more detail or figure out where we're kind of in sync. And so Rob's gonna share and kind of facilitate us through this discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. What I am showing now, it should be familiar to most of us in this group. It's basically taking the list of the community actions as defined in the CDP and mapping it to the community groups that you have provided to us as those that you're active with today that you believe have some link to how you might perform community-based implementation of the CDP actions in the future. And as you can see, then we try to capture that input from all of the members. We did receive some written feedback from a couple of members, and we did a one-on-one session with a couple to do the mapping live to try to, further explore the concept. And there are a few then who have not fully been mapped here also. But the spreadsheet view of this is a little bit difficult. So we've kind of reorganized it in a way, as Keiko was suggesting, around the working groups that Councilmember Kimball spoke to in the last meeting, where several of you then kind of raised your interest for the different working groups. And so we started that as an organizational perspective to kind of see what else can we learn from the mapping that you provided. And what you'll see here then is at the top, I've listed the subsections of the CDP along with their respective community action numbers, of course, not the details, but just the numbers that represent those that you have already mapped certain community groups to. And what it opens up then is the perspective that these could be more of a group then that kind of work on this particular area. And you'll see then that, of course, those of you who have volunteered for a particular topic, you of course mapped specific CAs or community actions to them based upon that perspective, but it's also a bit broader in a lot of areas where there are different members. And this is sort of the idea. We were trying to see where can we find what members are working on in a similar direction or on similar topics across the board, and see then how you can collaborate and work together to take actions forward. I think the challenge now is what to do with this information, right? It's not full in the sense that we haven't done, a thorough mapping of all groups to all community actions. There are some members missing. Carol is not mapped in this picture, and Bob, you are not here either, although we know that your particular interest may be around the shoreline and setback concept. I think Keiko kind of raised that as sort of your background interest area. So that's something that maybe we can kind of fit into this picture as well. But the idea here then is, the challenge here is, how do you take this picture of interests and community links, as well as the working group that Councilmember Kimball is focusing on, and define basically an action plan? What real actions could be taken during the coming months? And I think this part of this may also kind of have to relate to what we hear from Councilmember Kimball a little bit later about what the direction is going to be with some of these groups, and or sort of the tactical activities, and how those can then align to these other actions in detail that fall under the same topic. So this is sort of where we are today. We've got a basic mapping here which shows some synergy between interests of the different AC members and groups that they are working with. I think we have a little bit of work to kind of fit Bob into this overall picture, and need to reach out to Carol as well. So what I'd like to do, I think at this point, is just open it up to the floor for some reflections or comments, and maybe, I don't know if now is the appropriate time to link it to what Councilmember Kimball is doing, because I know that is a later agenda topic, but somehow these two things are kind of integrated. So maybe open it up first to the AC members to say, what do you see out of this picture? And what do you maybe think about next steps in trying to define an actual action plan to start making implementation a reality?
I think I just want to emphasize real quick too, that this is us trying to figure out, I mean, as Brad mentioned in the beginning, right, we only have half a year left as we're working on this. And so we can always think about an action plan that would go a year from now if we wanted to do that. And this is not to say that if anything else is on your plates that we're not going to focus on that as action committee members, but we also don't want you folks to get overwhelmed with the amount of groups that you're working with and projects that you're trying to implement. And so if this kind of grouping is helpful, I think we'd like to hear about that. And if it's not helpful, then if there are other suggestions about how we can kind of prioritize our work.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Because there's so many topics in this CDP, we're just trying to narrow down the ones that we're most interested in so that we can work on things sooner than later. Is that what the mapping helps us do?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think, yeah, we were trying to identify things you folks were already working on or really interested in. And that's not to say that other folks aren't working on other things in the community either, but really trying to narrow down. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
we are not really able to do work, but if we wanted to connect up, say, I want to schedule an appointment with Brad, and we could see, more about what we think about improving roadway networks. And then if we have any ideas, then we can bring the ideas back here to present as far as like a action plan, I guess. that what you guys want us to do?
Can I jump in here?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, so this list of items really came from my experience knocking on doors and being out with the community about what were some of the key priorities out of the CDP as far as wanting things done right away. And so it's not by any means an exhaustive list. And certainly if there are other things that you guys see as priorities from your interactions and in your community groups, then this isn't meant to, preclude those. I think we can all talk about those different priorities. With the example that you just gave, Nikki, what I'd love to have happen is you and Nick and I you and Brad and I get together and talk story about some of your ideas and really form a hui around it with the two of you and any other either relevant department folks or community members or community groups. And that's how I see this moving forward is you two would take the lead in that particular subject area in terms of getting a network together that would have interest and expertise that could help advance action items in that sector. Does that clarify at least what I was thinking around these items?
Yeah.
So this is Brad. I'm just going to chime in terms of like the roadway network item. I'm glad that our next meeting is sort of the all AC meeting. And the way I sort of try and look at things from a big systems approach. And, a lot of this stuff is common to all. And I think I've been, harping on this all along. And so, for the roadway network, I know Heather is, sort of priority as a representative, community representative is, kind of life safety and health, that type of thing. And so obviously, like roadway networks and emergency preparedness and hazard mitigation, to me, all these things are sort of, like kind of high priority. And then we're dealing with an issue here in Hākālau, and it's a prime example of, trying to get our arms around the issue of, say, the roads in limbo and alternate access routes for when areas are cut off or not maintained. And then also with the repairs going on, constant, the bridges are, being inspected and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of, impacts. So anyway, my point was for like this roadway network, I would like to, in this case, a strategy is like, obviously we need the information on the roads in limbo for our district. And I think the planning department, along with DPW and stuff, they need to address that on a broader basis, but then that's island wide. And so we can have that discussion, but I'm hoping that we can, have this broader discussion with the all AC meeting so that we can verify and confirm that some of these issues are of interest to other districts as well. I don't think we're the only one. And in which case, so anyway, Nikki, just the strategy is like, hey, I know that there's plantation maps that the county doesn't have all of it, and they're available. And there's a lot of private roads that were part of the plantation, but now are currently private. And so a lot of these routes are not being maintained and people are blocking them off. And, it's private, but we missed the boat on that. So anyway, those are some issues that we can get on, I think, relatively quickly, or should, so that we have that kind of emergency preparedness. Pauwelo, just happened, the brush fire. And, that's huge. I mean, it could cut off people, and it was close to the village, the community garden there. And so, anyway, so those are some strategies that I'm thinking about. Be specific for the Hāmākua district, but then also start thinking about the other players and other action committees so that we can, we can kind of handle it systematically. And I think you can apply that same approach to a lot of these other, categories. And so I'm hoping that, and then that way we empower more of the community voice in some of the process, because I have to say, and I'll share with you in an update later about the Hakalau situation is just pretty dismal in terms of response from the administration. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'll reach out to make an appointment with you folks, and so we can start at least on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
That'd be great. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Brad, that yes, a lot of these are actually issues that are very well spelled out in the Hāmākua CDP. I think I've said this before, that I think the Hāmākua CDP is the best one, because it is so thorough. And as we work through as Hui's some of these issues, I hope we have a mind towards them being exportable to the other districts, because yes, these issues are not so localized to just Hāmākua, but will have impact across the whole island. And so I think, we have a real opportunity to show leadership here in terms of taking CDP defined objectives and really putting forth an action item and an agenda to get these things done. So thank you for expressing that.
Mhm, mhm. One thing I'd like to do to move forward, I mean, we do have sort of a recommended way, I think, according to the words of Council Member Kimball and the conversation we just had. But before we kind of take that to a conclusion about how we lead that kind of organization, I just want to give room for other members. If there's any other reflections you would like to make about what this picture means, or what you might say we should do to maybe complement it or fill it in other ways. Are there any other voices that would like to give input? Okay, I see Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes. Is this communication, this working group, or I don't want to call it, but do we, is this the way we can interact with state agencies, especially areas, I'm interested in the coastal zone setback issue, an issue about a fisherman Hui, but I'm on the coastal zone management team also. So there's always seems to be, this is not my Kuleana issue. So how do we bridge that little divide there? As a member, can I kind of basically work in crossing those boundaries? Because the base of the cliff or the high tide mark and are really the boundaries, but no agencies, whether state or county, want to claim their responsibility. So I don't know whether that's the way we can proceed, but so I'm very unclear about what this committee will do. So maybe Rob, you and I can have a little meeting later, and then I can define where I can fit in. So.
Okay.
This is Crystal. I just wanted to jump off of what Bob said and kind of reflect a little bit on what Nikki said, because I don't quite know what our expectations are in terms of, are we leading the conversations? Are we leading the conversations with, joining Councilmember Kimball, or are we doing it in tandem with the planning department, or are we the ones who started? I'm not clear about the process that we are taking to get some of these issues done. It's just kind of vague to me. So I just would want a little bit more clarity, because I see names and issues and interests and things like that, but I don't know what this all means, and I don't know what it. I'm not clear on how we move forward on these.
Sure. So I think there's a few different tracks and ways that we can do that. And so this kind of the community action guide that was pulled out of the CDP has kind of clear steps and suggestions about how community moves forward with these different community actions. And there are some where community can completely move it on their own. And then there are other actions where it's going to take collaboration between the community, the county, the state, other large landowners, whatever it may be. And then there are some things out of the CDP that we rely strictly on the county to implement, whether it's a zoning update, or, whatever that is. And so it's kind of this navigation of what can we do as community members? How do we bring in, when do we bring in the county? How do we help then fill in the pukas and bring other folks to the table? And so it's hard to define specifically without understanding kind of what action we want to move forward on. And so we do have some tools that we're trying to develop that might help folks work through that, as far as defining kind of what the action might be, who the different players might be, where if we're stuck working on something. So like Bob is explaining that we're stuck, we need buy-in from the different agencies. And so then how do we, maybe it's Councilmember Kimball who can help us pull these people, everybody to the table at the same time, so that we can have this kind of bigger discussion about how we move forward. So I know that's kind of gray and not specifically designed. Yeah, so I think, and that's part of our role, right, is to work with you folks to try and understand where we fit in this, where the certain action would fit in this.
Sorry, I know that Ton, I want to bring you into the conversation. I see you're raising your hand. My apologies, but let me just kind of conclude on something for Keiko to help clarify Crystal, then we'll get right to you, Ton, if I may just have one more minute. Maybe as a concrete example, Crystal, if you see up here under expand system of preserves community action 2, which comes directly out of the CDP. If we look at that description, this one is about establishing acquisition priorities for punk, and there is a process that's defined for that. Then you as community members can work on your own and drive. And I think that's sort of what Keiko was saying. That could be a truly community-based one, where some of the other items, particularly we talk about roadways, then we're going to have to get into collaboration. So I think the key is to look at the descriptions of the community actions that were defined in the CDP and imagine, how is it that I can leverage my community groups to help achieve these? And then where do I need help? And then we have to figure out how do we support you in getting that help. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out as a clarification of what Keiko was saying to demonstrate the point. But I want to give Ton now a chance. I know he's been trying to get in here. Go ahead, Ton.
Sure, thanks. Well, of course, I notice obviously that the working groups that Councilmember Kimball defined are the same as what's going across the top. And column 2, of course, is the subcommittees that we kind of assigned ourselves to last session. And so I'm not sure now how I should relate to my other interests. Say I have an interest in improving roadway network. Do you want me to add my name over on improved roadway network? Is that how we're relating to this space? Also, I noticed that Brad had Brad's in each of the columns. And I noticed that 2 of the categories have 3 members. So are what you're designing here is essentially, instead of the subcommittees that we assigned ourselves to last meeting, you're describing working groups here by this horizontal arrangement of the same items that are vertically in the first column?
Yes, you touched on a very critical point here, and that is about how we can organize you guys to realize this. So I'll make a couple of comments. One is that the first time we attempted to do this mapping, where some of the members will reflect back just on a few kind of priorities that they were interested in or working on or wanted to get involved with. So the mapping seems kind of limited. However, with Brad and Rhonda, we had a one-on-one session, which then it kind of expanded that viewpoint. Of course, when you're talking about these things, then you kind of get more, you kind of tag yourself more to areas because there's a real possibility that your community organizations can reach to them. So we have varying degrees, I think, of how that mapping was done. So I think that could be a little bit misleading of what the intention is. Of course, we don't want to dissuade you from, if you have an interest that is on here, to be involved with that, or another item that's in the community actions that is not reflected here. But we were trying to figure out, is this a good enough picture for a starting point? How can we take this picture and at least do some actions now and then continue to evolve that action plan over time, as things get solved or get implemented, putting something else into the hopper. Now, as far as what this meant, we haven't really said that these are some kind of subcommittees or anything yet. I think that is to be defined. Right, because of Sunshine Law, you have the ability to do investigatory committees, which there are some rules about, or if it's just two of you, working together, that could be done in a less formal way. So there's going to be different approaches to tackling the different sub actions that might fall under a category.
Can I jump in, Rob? Thanks
Sure.
for clarifying all of that. And I'll kind of go back to what I said initially at the previous meeting about this, is that there is so much to do in our district. And as council member, I can't do it all. And you guys are active and passionate and have a lot of expertise. You have a lot of connections. You have a lot of capacity. And so my idea was, okay, here's this group of people that has been designated and appointed to be an action committee. Can we focus on some of these issues to move the needle? And I'm really looking at you folks to kind of lead on this, the people that have been identified as being interested in these areas, with me as a partner, of course, when we need to establish connections between either county level departments or state departments, things like that. And what Rob is saying, yes, is, as we move forward with the two individuals, which is allowed under Sunshine Law, if something becomes more expansive where we need to incorporate an ad hoc committee or investigatory committee of the AC, then we bring that to the agenda. But those have to be more specific. We can't just say emergency preparedness ad hoc. It has to be more specific if we're going to form that within the confines of how Sunshine Law works. So hopefully that clarifies, in addition to what Brad said, Rob said, as far as the expectations is I'm hoping that you folks will kind of take the lead on some of these things. I know that for some of these, there's some WHOIs already in place that I've connected folks to, but if that's not something you're comfortable with, and then just say so. Like I don't want to put any burden on anybody that they're not willing to take on.
I saw Jeff. Were you trying to get in on the conversation here?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the way that I see this is it's an opportunity to connect with the community, with community members and groups in the community. So as an AC member, we can reach out to specific people that may have areas of expertise and have them join the working group. And that's exactly the effort that I've made with emergency preparedness. It doesn't necessarily have to involve just AC members. So I was hitting some roadblocks and discussed it with Heather, and actually discovered that Francine, who's joined us today to give testimony on another issue, had a lot of expertise in regard to emergency preparedness. So I invited her to join the working group and help lead. And I think that's a good way to move forward with this. And it might not be an individual, it might be an organization as well.
No, very good point. Thank you for illustrating that, Jeff.
Excellent. Yeah, and just to add to that, sorry, one of the things that Jeff identified he needed kind of other help with is maybe the critical mapping or mapping of critical infrastructure that exists. And so we have some of that with the GP. And so it's kind of this process of working through and then them reaching out when they need help or assistance to connect or dig something up. So perfect example, Jeff, thank you.
Go ahead, Ton. I see you raising your hand.
Sure. So I did have the impression last week or last couple of months ago that column 2 was in fact subcommittees, and that was the reason why we were limited to 2 people, on each of those committees. But now columns 3 through 6 are in fact 3 through 7 are in fact working groups, and however many people would like to be involved in that particular working group can put their names in those spaces.
Well, I would kind of say it in a little different way. Let's say this column here under AC interest become the basic subgroup pairs of you who are going to drive an issue. I was trying to indicate where other members have noted that the organizations that they liaison with could have a tie to related community actions. So it's not to say that this has to be the group, but they might be contacts that you work with. And then, of course, if that goes beyond sunshine law, we need to speak to that. But there are multiple actions under each of these categories too. So it's not as if, you can't be working in different pairs on different actions and still not violate the sunshine law. So you have to kind of be a little creative about what you're doing. These columns here were just to kind of illustrate that the interest, is broad across the members in the different categories. So don't misinterpret it as a working group, but it's like, here are the potential contacts you can make to drive different actions through the committee. Did that help?
Yes. So say I have an interest in maybe 3 of these columns. Should I, in some way or another, put my name under those 3?
Sure. Absolutely. We can do that. So then that, once then we establish who and how will drive it, then they'll know that interest exists. Absolutely. So if you have something, immediate you would like to note, I could, drop your name in there, and then we can fill in any more details subsequently.
Yeah, Tom, just to kind of give you sort of, like what I did, and maybe it's too broad, but the way I looked at it is that, we all come from different areas of Hāmākua, and so we will have more specific, knowledge of our own areas. And so, for example, on public access trails, I had been working with YPO, so I know that they, that's a big issue down there. But, as far as in the Hakalau, Honolulu, where I live, there's organizations that I'm tied into that, if we needed input on public access trails or where would be, good areas to submit to PONC or those types of things, then those would be groups and organizations that I could reach out to. So that's how I sort of targeted that. And then, say example for Bob, Bob has his CZM, state affiliations, and, that's, though we're talking about community actions, he can reach out to the state agencies for the partnerships, the kokua actions, but at the same time, he might be tied into, like, say, the Pipikeo Fishing Community Association, where they have the fishing permits. So, those would be, again, for that particular area, where everybody can participate if they have interest, or at least know people to point, the main members to kind of, hey, reach out to these guys, because, so, that's sort of how I'm looking at, this whole exercise. Yeah. And then, excuse me, one more thing. I know I had asked at the last meeting for planning to also prioritize their priorities in terms of these major categories, because then we can also keep ourselves accountable, but also the synergies of community and planning, working on certain things like the coastal resources. They got to do something about the setbacks because that's an ongoing issue. And that's not just Hāmākua, but they got to address it. And so that they have, I believe they have a contract in the works for that. So, that's happening at the county responsibility and action areas, but Bob can help support that from the community side as well. So anyway, that's sort of a kind of anecdotal kind of.
So I have a
Okay, go ahead,
question.
Nikki. Yep.
Hypothetically speaking, say that there was an idea discussed in the community meeting and it was like, why don't we do X to help mitigate with whatever this traffic problems on Waipio Road or something like that. And so then we were like, well, why don't we talk about it? How do we have those conversations and say, to determine whether, yes, we want to support that idea and make that idea happen. And since we're the CDP, maybe we can, help make that happen. Does it get agendized and are we able to decide something? Like, yes, we're officially going to help these people make this idea happen.
I'll throw out an idea, Keiko. You tell me if this aligns to the Sunshine Law. Seeing here, then, if you take that roadway example, you can see if you have a couple of people who might potentially be interested in the committee. I would imagine that it's appropriate for you to have a one-on-one with each of them separately to discuss the topic. Mm-hmm. Right. Then as you gather that info and you believe then there's something constructive to recommend, then yes, that's when I think you would come to the meeting on and put it on the agenda and say, we want to maybe establish a subcommittee or set forward, put in particular action into the plan, so that we can manage and track everything that you're doing. I think that kind of conversation in preparation would be okay, as long as you're never, organizing a conversation beyond the two members, but also make sure that it's clear that you're not making decisions, right? That you're gathering information and perspectives and kind of bringing that then to the table. Because I think that's what Sunshine Law is trying to avoid is the hidden conclusions or agreements that are going to be made.
Yeah, I just wasn't knowing what was appropriate to bring to an agenda item and like as for homework next time, if I were to do a one-to-one with Crystal and then with Brad and then with Heather and then with Jeff and then with Ton and then we, like which things do we bring back and how do we have conversations with the larger group to keep moving things forward?
Nikki, I guess, this would be sort of my sort of take on that is that, if you come up with issues that, you have your ear to the ground, coconut wireless or whatever, and it's becomes like a more persistent, loud, and then there's a group of people that are interested, just bring it up to, any of you can do it like Rob said, individually with the members, and then we can easily decide if we want to agendize it on a meeting. But it's just keep your ear to the ground and look for the sparks in the community, because basically we are representatives of the community's voice. So just put it out there. I mean, if you hear it and it becomes a hot issue, hot topic, like for example, we had in Papaico, the sugar mill property down there. That became huge, right? So, Valerie was involved and a bunch of different community members were involved. And then it takes on its own life, but it's, again, community initiated, and then other people join in and the planning has to get involved, and then the other, broader, So I think that's how it is. And that's what I was kind of referring to when there's, we can't be the ones to say, hey, just because we have our own special interests. I think we got to look for the sparks and the fire out there, the interest and passion, and then help in empowering that effort. That's how I see my role, in terms of, and then, we're going to be kind of moving flexible and hitting it on various levels from the community side, and hopefully the combined efforts of the county and other agencies and organizations, then hopefully things can get either done, implemented.
Mhm.
If I could add to what Brad is saying, I think the threshold in terms of when you got to worry about sunshine law is whether or not something you're talking about is going to be something that is going to be before the action committee as a decision. So if you're out in the community and you hear something about emergency preparedness, for example, you can go ahead and just share that with Jeff, knowing that he's the primary person that's looking into emergency preparedness actions. What shouldn't happen is if, for example, you have an idea about an action that would ultimately be voted on by the action committee to support or to write a letter or to take a specific action on, you shouldn't farm that out to everybody, because that would put you in violation of the sunshine law. So it's okay to share concepts, but that's kind of the trigger. Is it going to be a decision that's going to be before the board at some point?
And to add to that, we're just advisory, so,
Fair enough. Go ahead, Todd.
Yes, so then our what you would expect of us would be that individually, you would like for each of us to get back to you, because I'm sure we don't have time to do it now, but get back to you as planning with the other areas of interest that we have and the community groups that we're associated with that might have special application to that area of interest. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, of course. Of course, we want to gather that, and track all of that. Also, then I think, what we're also proposing, though, is for you guys as a group to kind of decide what level of scope are you going to work on first, and try to parse out then particular actions and a timeline and next steps to do it. So there's a combination here of planning this all out. What is it that you want to do in the near future? And then what is it that you might put into the hopper for the long range? So absolutely, we should be tracking all of that. So yes, please, as you have more input that you would like for us to gather into this picture, please provide that. I know that we have, Chair Kurokawa, some more agenda items. We've heard some input here. I would have a suggestion I'd like to put on the table about maybe how to go forward with this and see if you guys are okay with that. What I would say is, for these main categories, is it appropriate for us to say, let's take a lead, or let's say who it will be the lead on each one, who will then make the contact with the other AC members, whether it's one-on-one or not, and then also make the link to Council Member Kimball when it's time to integrate into that working group. Is that a smart strategy here to kind of name a lead, at least for now, in these different categories?
I think that we should just say that we'll meet with each other, except for Jeff, who seems to already be running fantastically. The rest of us are in pairs. Oh, sorry, Bob, you're new. Would we just say that by the next meeting, we'll all have met with our partner? And then if we can also have met with Councilmember Kimball, maybe that would be an extra benefit.
Okay, no, that's a good
because
alternative.
I don't know enough to say that I'd like to lead anything at the moment.
Fair enough.
And I'll just throw out there that we're always available. So if there's something you hear out in the community that needs to be brought to our attention, or you want us to watch for something or research something, or if you have a question about what a certain community action actually means or will entail, just we're always open. So an email, a phone call,
Yes. I had a conversation earlier today with Heather. And for instance, on the public access trails committee, I already, and Heather already has identified some persons who might be interested in serving as a working group. Is that okay with the planning department that we go ahead and identify working groups in each of these headings?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only, the public open space one is the only one that, only example where there's already a HUI that was already formed that I've intended to bring you guys into. For the rest of them, I'm looking for you guys to reach out to your networks and bring people together that you think might provide some good solutions for the community.
Okay. I sense we're nearing the conclusion of this conversation for today. So I think it's been a very good and engaging conversation. And I think what we'll note then as the action to go forward, we'll go with the Nikki alternative to say that those in that column of AC interest, you guys have the task then to liaison between yourselves, discuss what you may want to take forward, and reach out to Councilmember Kimball to also see then how that coordination will continue, and then to feedback in the coming meetings. So then, Chair Kurokawa, I think we're done with this agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you very much, Rob. The next item of business is the Capital Improvement Program recommendations, the CIP. So Heather will facilitate that. And this is for, I believe, 2021 and 22 CIP budget, which has already been passed, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, take it away, Heather.
Thank you. Just actually, Rob, if you could share that document from today on the screen, or somebody from planning.
I think Alexis will. So
Okay,
one moment. Yeah, we'll bring it up.
Great. So really just circling back to this, I only heard from Rhonda about her thoughts on the CIP items that are for the district or for the county as a whole in terms of what the action committee views as priorities. As mentioned by Brad, the CIP budget has been approved. The CIP budget is a wish list, if you will, of things that we would like to see done. It doesn't mean that that's funded. The only one that is on the wish list once it comes up here is the Hāmākua temporary bridge. We were actually able to find money for that. But just asking for feedback from you folks in terms of, moving forward. I'll be out there looking for funding sources for these different projects. I just wanted to get a sense from you guys what you saw as priorities in terms of these budget items. Alexis, are you able to share the screen?
Yeah, one moment.
If not, I can. I do have it up, but I would need somebody to give me privileges.
Heather, where exactly is the Hāmākua stream?
It's in Pepikeo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one Kapukuea Homestead Road.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's unlike Kahakini, it's not in a gulch, it's in a straightaway essentially. So that's why we're able to use the temporary bridge there.
That's by the gear. If you go up, you cannot go up how you used to.
Okay, okay, got it.
Yeah.
And that's county.
It is county.
County.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So a whole chunk of residences in the ag areas were cut off.
Yeah, very similar issue to what you guys have in Hakalau. There's a detour in this case, there's a detour going through a private subdivision, and there was a memorandum of understanding or right of entry agreement between the county and the private subdivision that they could use that detour until May. and that expired. And so there's been a renegotiation, and it's been extended to the end of the year, with the temporary bridge being hopefully being installed by the end of the year, so that the detour is no longer required. Yeah. So here's our list of capital improvement items for the district, and then for the district as a whole. Obviously, the ones that are for a district as the whole, or for the county as a whole, are somewhat general. Some of the funds for bridge repair will come to District 1, of course. The ones up above, wastewater treatment, WWTP, are wastewater treatment upgrades. We've had, since the last time we met, we had another spill out of Papaico. So that continues to be a real concern. Obviously, Brad's Bridge is on there, wanting to get that taken care of as well. So any thoughts on from folks on this priority, on the CIP list, about priorities that should be pursued for funding over the next year?
Heather, can you share, since this has been adopted as items in the CIP, can you share a little bit more about the process? Because, in terms of the funds aren't available yet, or they've been allotted, and, there's all these terms that they use. So if, the money, anyway, so yeah, can you share that?
So the capital improvement budget is, like I said, it's a wish list. But probably the more critical thing to understand about it is that if funding could potentially come in at a later point for a project, and we don't have it in the CIP budget, there's no mechanism to attribute those funds to that project. And so we put things in the CIP budget in anticipation of funds coming in, and usually things go onto the CIP budget for 3 years at a time. And a couple of these things, like the Hāmākua Park, they were lapsing. And so, I don't expect money to be coming for Hāmākua Park anytime soon, because we have all the ADA projects, but I wanted to keep it in there in case there was something out there that I could go after to cover that project. And if it hadn't been in the CIP budget, then there would be no way to appropriate those funds. So step 2 is appropriating the funds. So we designate this as a project. Step 2 is we appropriate those funds from the budget. And then step 3 is we actually encumber those funds, or we spend those funds to make the project happen. So at this point, with the exception of the Hāmākua Bridge, the temporary bridge, which we have found funding for. And then there actually is money from FEMA for Kahakini. So that one does have some funds appropriated to it. Without the CIP budget right in front of me, I couldn't tell you how much has been appropriated through FEMA. So some of these do have partial appropriations already tied to them. Papaloa elderly housing is actually moving forward as well.
So for us who haven't been paying close attention, there are large, many other projects that are already funded. These are just ones that there wasn't quite enough money for, and hope there will be some money for, right? So like we were told there was money for other things at Papaloa Park, for example. But then that's not on this list, but that's because it's already been budgeted.
Actually, for Papaloa Gym, that falls under the ADA compliance repairs, and that I don't see on the all districts list, but it should be. Yes, that has been appropriated. So this list would include things that do have some appropriations already. For example, the bridge repair, we did transfer funds from one account to another to that CIP, but DPW will determine how that's allocated. So when we're looking at the ones that are more general for the full district, those are places where you guys could identify priorities within that category within the district that I can talk to the departments about. I hope that answers your question. It's a little, some of them are funded and some of them are not. I guess that's the easy answer. So Papaaloa fund falls under the ADA compliance, and we do have funding for that.
Heather, one question on the all district DPW hurricane lane damage projects and bridge repair. Is any of that, do we know specifically which ones are, which Hāmākua projects are part of that?
No, not yet. We do know that Hāmākua projects were, Hāmākua was specifically singled out in the language of the appropriation as an area that would receive a certain amount of those funds. And I could look that up. I don't have that handy. I want to say it was like 11 million or something, which, you know, in terms of bridge repair is not a ton. But as far as like what specific bridges those would go to, I have not been provided with that list from DPW, but this is an opportunity. If you guys know of something that looks dire, I can communicate with them. Hey, some of this should go to Bridge X. Somebody recently communicated with me about the bridge down to Lapahoihoi Point. And so I think some funding is being directed there because that's looking pretty shaky.
So Heather, I guess, you know, sort of speaking up for my particular area, you know, since we haven't heard at all from DPW, yeah, if we could kind of press and find out what funds have been appropriated for what portions, because there's the Kahakini, there's the Kole, there is the embankment, you know, the embankment, which if that's not considered at the same time, then it doesn't matter if you open the bridge up on either side to that particular area for access for the Kaiviki Homestead roads. And then, yeah, I'm kind of curious as far as the hurricane lane damage projects, because I know that Kole was damaged during Hurricane Lane, and so was Kahakini. But I don't know if that, you know, qualified or any of that is earmarked for that. And same with the bridge repairs. And then I guess with DPW, like, you know, we have that whole, all of the bridges, I believe, on the island that have been identified. So there's a prioritized plan, or at least, you know, identified, but has it been looked at in terms of, you know, and then how do they delegate and split it up amongst all the districts, right? Until it becomes a emergency, which is what happened at Makea and Kahakini.
Yeah, I will ask for that information, and I will provide it to Keiko to mail out to you folks if that works, and get a report on the DPW hurricane lane damage, DPW bridge repairs, and then you wanted more specific details. I know you want more on Kahakini. And we need to have a community meeting with you folks on that. I still haven't gotten any reply on that, although I did talk to Charisse, who is the new communications person for DPW. And so she's kind of she's being the floodgate person. And she said, oh yeah, I know about that. And I'm going to make sure we get a response to Brad and everybody. So in the future, we got to make sure to CC her on the emails, and I'll make sure to give you her contact info as well. But I'll provide a report to Keiko to share with you all on those items.
Awesome. And then we'll try to dig into provide a comprehensive report of CIP past and present. So then you guys can see, to Nikki's point, of what's already been added to the list, whether the funds have been appropriated, allotted, or where the project stands. So then.
And I was just clear, I got some vacation by text that I misspoke and need to clarify that appropriates is when it's in the CIP, and allotted is when the money goes to it. So apologize for the confusion and terminology. See, I'm even still learning, yeah.
Looks like Jeff wants to speak. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I was wondering in regard to the bridges. I know that there's some bridges in our area that seem to be in disrepair, but I have no way of making that assessment. So is that information available to us? Has a survey been done of all the different bridges? And is there a list of those that might be critical so that we can decide whether or not we want to prioritize them?
Yeah, so the state bridges do go through an analysis, a regular review, and that information is available through the state, through the Department of Transportation. The county bridges, I'm still trying to glean that a little bit, Jeff. I have to be honest. I'm still trying to figure out how often they're evaluated and by whom and what's the priority and how are decisions made. I don't fully understand that at this point, and I'm still looking for answers.
Jeff, I believe that there is the bridges on like the old Mamalahoa Highway.
Yeah, those are the state ones. Those are evaluated, and there is a data on that.
No, you know, like.
Oh, you mean the ones? Yeah.
Old Mamalahoa, which is the old highway. That is county generally, and I know that we came across some a document, so I'll try and track that down, because yeah, we had something.
Actually, Brad, I think now that you say that, I think it's an addendum to the CDP. I think it's in like page 92. I don't know why that's ringing a bell, but I think it's an addendum to the CDP.
Yeah, but Jeff, like, you know, we all know, they do these reports and they sit on shelves, and no one's really doing a systematic prioritized thing and then, you know, maintaining it and all that stuff. I mean, at least I know that the state is actually, you know, they're inspecting the bridges, and that's why all the that truck that is blocking the traffic out in our neck of the woods for Kole Bridge and some of the others. I know that they're doing something.
Go ahead, Ton.
I was sent a document, it wasn't more than a week ago, and I can't remember who it came from, but I remember I was just very impressed. It was a study of 400 bridges on the Big Island, and it was done in, I believe, 2011, and I think included in that was engineering evaluation. I'm not sure about that. I didn't actually access that study yet, but
That may be the document.
yeah, I'll get that document to each of you, in fact.
Okay. Anybody else have any more comments, responses, or, you know, for Heather in terms of the CIP? We'd like as much money as you can get, Heather. I know Honolulu folks have been waiting. It's a pretty sad playground equipment out there. It's probably from the 60s.
I'm gonna try to get all of it, but it you know, we have to pick and choose our paddles.
Yeah, especially since Parks is what, they've only done half of after I don't know how many years when the ADA. So now it's time for a lawsuit. Continue.
For the playground equipment?
No, ADA for all the parks, you know, they put the wheelchair access and handicap parking and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Okay, if nothing else on the CIP, we'll move on to the next item. And again, Heather, for opportunities to advance the CDP implementation. And I think Heather wanted to talk about recycling solid waste and green waste disposal.
Sorry, just a reminder, if we can let Francine provide her testimony first, and then we'll turn it over. Yeah.
Okay. So Francine, are you still there?
Yes, and I unmuted if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. So I noticed, Heather's agenda item talks about section 5.8, and she says focusing specifically on green waste. But what I did looking at the CDP was to do a search of terms to see how often Neighborhood Watch came up for recommendations to do some of the community actions. And it kind of comes out of that I focused in on maybe the broader part of that section 5.8.2. So with your indulgence, I may be talking about more than just green waste. So I'm Francine Roby. I live in Ahualoa. I'm with Ahualoa Neighborhood Watch, but I'm doing testimony on my own behalf, not as part of the organization, because we don't really have a structure to, talk for the organization. But basically, my overarching points that I kind of wanted to make, I guess, through any part of the CDP is twofold. And one is I'm really advocating for always having the mindset that we're looking for effective actions, not just actions so we can check a box and say, hey, we did that, we got something done. Because some of the examples I want to give are how actions just are completely ineffective. So we don't just want to continue doing what we're doing. And secondly, that advocating specifically that agencies that have some mandated responsibilities in any of these areas and who may look to citizen groups, community action groups to participate would first look to their own mandated responsibilities and shore those things up and make sure they're doing those things that they're required to do before they look to the community groups. Because as a member of a community group, I spend a whole lot of time telling agencies what they were supposed to have done and then finding out who can do it. So just two overarching things. So I'll start at 5.8.2 county actions for policy 84 on recycling, education, outreach and online signage. And just to mention, I live near Honoka'a, and our transfer station info is really not effective. So I don't want to just see more of that when we move toward an action to do more of education and outreach and online. For example, Honoka'a transfer station has 11 signs on the fence. And the biggest one is about not taking anything but cardboard or brown paper bags, and it's effective, giant letters effective, October 16th, 2019. Well, if that was supposed to be telling us that there was no more plastics recycling and that we've still got high five and we still do cardboard and paper, the sign doesn't do that at all. So whoever is doing the signs, we don't just want to give them more money to make more bad signs. We're not having an effective outcome of that. And I remember that the DEM did community presentations and kind of asked people a lot about the green waste stations before they did it. But apparently what they didn't do is ask people, how do you get information where these things are and what their hours are? Because if you go on the website, Honoka'a is not listed as a green waste site, but they've got a tiny little sign among these 11 signs that has hours for green waste. So I'm guessing they take green waste, but who would know, right? If people get their info by driving by and looking at the sign on the gate, that's where the sign should be. It should be pretty big font, but we're kind of not getting there now. So on to a consequence of that may be that if people don't know that's a green waste site, we are seeing in Ahualoa, which is Mauka from the transfer station, dumping of clobs of green waste. So we find them in gulches, we find them in turnouts, we find them down cliffs. So there's a consequence when that info is not conveyed clearly to the public. Policy 87 about educating neighborhood watch groups and so on to identify and report littering and illegal dump sites to DEM. So in my Ahualoa neighborhood watch group, we've set up patrols that keep an eye on things, that go around, they look for stuff, and monthly roadside cleanups. And I had to do a lot of research to find out who had responsibility for that and get the proper paperwork and all that to do it right and safely. But my research never came across anything that told me to go to DEM as part of the loop for looking at that sort of thing. So yes, effective education is really needed for community groups to know what parties are part of the deal. Give you an example. on my road, Old Mamalahoa Highway in Hualoa, there's a part of the Hāmākua Forest Reserve. It has a lovely trail that goes way down, and people tell me it goes all the way out to the other side of the road, and was used for a long time as a trail, a cattle trail. So when you go down there on this beautiful site in the forest reserve, there are 4 mattresses and 2 abandoned cars and bags of household trash. Okay, it took me weeks to find out who owned that property. Local people said it's KS, it's, you know, BE, it's all these different, no, I had to, you know, check out how many feet it was from the other road, who owned the property, who was in charge of that. It's state land. So I've been in touch with state land for weeks. You know, one time they called me back. We kicked around how tough it is to put up a chain across. You can't put up a sign without doing a construction contract with the state. It's a big deal. So this is not a simple thing for community groups to just kind of jump on board and be a partner and like help the guys figure this out. And we're also not going to do stakeouts in the middle of the night when this dumping happens. You know, I keep going back to a turnout near a Hualoa Reservoir, which a lot of people don't even know about because they don't go out of town that way. And there's heavy industrial dumping that's going on there, chemicals. One time I found a half of a butchered sow that was there, like 6 feet long. There are, we did do trash pickups there, and the stuff is sharp and heavy and toxic. It's not picking up bottle caps on the beach. So when I read this stuff about agencies saying, oh, become a community partner and help us do, you know, cleanup of littering and stuff, it's not litter. Some of it's, yeah, somebody's lunch flew out the window, but some of this is really toxic stuff. And I can't get to the people who are responsible for this stuff easily. And I'm good at looking stuff up online. I can talk to bureaucrats. I've been one for a long time. So that's the kind of thing that I'm saying when we look to do an action and we add it as a community action, it's just not that real simple. And it's not being laid out, you know, maybe step by step in the implementation phase that's going to make it be effective and work. A lot of times the things that are set up on websites, we can't even find them. You know, the listing in this document that says, you know, go to Hawaii Zero Waste, illegal dumping. Well, if you click on that link, yeah, it works. But if you're on your website and you're looking for something about illegal dumping, it's under resources. I wouldn't have thought to go to resources to look for illegal dumping. So it can be frustrating, you know, we're people that are volunteers, we're not full-time, but I swear it has become a full-time job for me. If I'm trying to follow the link that says community cleanup, that's on one of these documents, it doesn't go to that topic. And then I have to read page after page of a website to find where there might be a clue to lead me somewhere to get some information. So the agencies have some work to do before we say to them, please take on this action and bring in community people to be a partner to that. That's not exactly just the easy way that it's going to work. So, you know, community groups like my own, it's a tiny little group. We're willing, many of them are active. I know there are neighborhood watch groups all over. Some of them are also taking on emergency preparedness responsibilities, as mine is. But effective action and change is going to take active partners that first look to their own responsibilities where they have legislated mandated responsibilities. And so thanks for listening. I just wanted to put those out as kind of overarching things to keep in mind as we're looking for implementation of the actions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Francine. Heather, I'm gonna let you take over now, and hopefully, yeah, it's behavior change is not an easy thing, but hey, you know, if we care about our communities, if we care for the Aina, Malama Aina, blah blah blah, all those things, yeah, we see too many dump sites. It's sad. But anyway,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Heather.
Yes, and I swear I didn't coordinate with Francine before this, but she really kind of zeroed in on all the challenges that we're facing. And actually, the initial conversation was with somebody up there in your area about some of the green waste dumping up there and the other rubbish being dumped up there. And on the last meeting that we had, when I was going through all the various things where I was looking for partners from the action committee, we didn't quite have time to talk about this one. And so really just looking for a couple of folks that are interested in taking the lead on coming up with a game plan around this. Francine has highlighted very well some of the issues that we have. Communication from DEM, the education piece, very critical. I get a lot of calls from people not understanding what the rules are at the transfer station. Francine, I had no idea you could do green waste dumping at Hāmākua. In fact, I'm not sure DEM knows that you can do that.
I don't know if you
they,
can. It's a little sign, but I don't know.
Well, because one of the things that I had talked with them about was at doing a green waste dumping day up there. And so it sounded like they weren't doing it already. So I'm not sure that sign is meaningful or not. That's something I'm going to have to follow up with. But it's a complex problem, and especially in our area where we could do some creative solutions around composting and community composting. Although there's challenges there, we're going to have partnerships at the state level to make that happen. But just looking for a couple of people that have an interest from this action committee on taking the lead on this particular subject matter. And as Brad said, it's a complex one because it does involve behavioral change.
This is something that I'm very interested in. However, time is an issue, of course. My perception is that the real problem is that there's very few places that you can dump green waste, and it's forcing the community just to dump it wherever they can. It's being dumped in the gulches, it's being dumped on my back driveway, and I'm sure the same is happening with garbage all over the place. The state, we have tried to put through compost bill after compost bill for the last 2 years and have not been successful in getting that done. I think a lot of it is the state and the county setting a good example, and that is not being done either. So I would like to investigate this further, particularly in regard to green waste. And as far as I know, any of the transfer stations can take green waste on a designated day. You're just limited to a pickup truck full. And it has to be between the hours of 8 and 4. So that was my understanding, and I think that it's just getting the information out, and as Brad so eloquently put, educating. But I think it really starts with the county and the state setting a good example, and we have got to do something. Green waste is actually very valuable. It can be turned into compost. Why that's not being done is beyond me. This is a farming, this is an agricultural community. Everybody needs compost. But we're just dumping it and it's going to the landfill and not being utilized. And to me, that's just an absolute crime. I don't understand how it can be allowed to happen. But yeah, I'll time permitting, I would definitely try to help out in any way I can, because it is a huge issue, and it's affecting each and every one of us. It's as Francine stated, if you drive up and down the roads, we're seeing more and more garbage being dumped everywhere. I had no idea that some of it was toxic, and there should be a means to immediately get that cleaned up if that's the case. And we should immediately have a source where we can go. As far as the transfer stations go, I've called myself many times because they open and close sporadically. They have staffing issues. I guess now it's been decided that they have to be staffed between 6 and 8, at least the Pauilo one, 6 and 8 in the morning and 4 and 6 in the afternoon. And if that person doesn't show up or has to leave for some reason, do you know what happens to that transfer station? It gets closed. We're only open 3 days a week. But if that person can't show up to close in the afternoon, when he leaves at 10 o'clock, he just closes the gate, and then we lose one of our 3 days. And what do you think happens to the garbage that people want to dump? It just
Right
gets
outside the
dumped on.
gate and around the area.
Yeah, there or in one of the nearby gulches.
Yeah.
I'll volunteer to help a little bit on that.
Okay. Well, I don't want to stretch you too thin, Jeff. I know you're already very active on the other ones. And if nobody's willing to or interested in kind of taking the lead, if you've got other members in your community that maybe we can that would be interested in helping with that, that's another option. This is an area way outside of my expertise, but something that has become more and more critical, as Francine has highlighted. And it's certainly not lost on me that a lot of the responsibility of this does fall on the state and the county to do what they're already supposed to be doing. Sometimes we need a large voice of people to remind them of that. And that's part of this too, right? Is being a mechanism to communicate these concerns. I think we could definitely provide DEM feedback on some of the specific examples that you gave, Francine, about access through their website. I mean, folks that are very close to something like that, having developed their own website, they may not know how ineffectual parts of it are. That was similar with civil defense and how their website was set up, and it was not real effective. And so I did have a conversation with them, and if you go to it now, it's a little bit different. So that's progress can be made.
Well, I'm already working with Francine on the the other cohort, so we can possibly work together on this as well.
Okay.
Sound okay, Francine?
Heather, I guess my initial, question that I have is, I know that the county, it's going to be coming out with this electronic thing where they can have, everything's going to be all online applications, building and so my hope maybe, is, for, like Francine mentioned, just the information and the ease of navigating. I mean, all of the departments have, their own sort of websites, but I don't know if anyone actually ever vets it for ease of access, just so it can become user friendly, because if it isn't, then, the information doesn't get out. And yeah, so, obviously, that is one aspect that the county could handle. And then the other one for me is huge on the, it's just leading by example and having, having, like I lived in Seattle for a long time. And so I saw the evolution of, like it becomes an ingrained habit, but, we are a rural island. And so the big thing is, well, transportation has got to be free. And I know that they're grappling right now with, how do they actually fund it? Because, we don't have the collection systems. And so, it used to be like, like I used to have, you pay for whatever you produce, so how you shop and all that kind of stuff. And then you pay less fee for, very little, small little trash can. And that was my experience. And I brought that home and was appalled. And then now I'm even more appalled. And as someone that used to subscribe to Garbage Magazine, I don't know if anybody, way back, a decade or two back, that was, I've always been interested, because to me, waste is not, it's not waste, it's resource. And then I also went to, when I was in the Kim administration, I was sent as third party from besides Barbara Bell and James Weatherford, to go to the waste to energy, symposium in New York. And, I came back with the conclusion that, no, it doesn't make sense for our island. And it's, I see, all the iterations of the contracts that were, done in terms of the volume and that the county was responsible for. It's just ridiculous. And at the same time, like, how do we educate ourselves at both the, individual local behavioral level plus the institutional state thing in terms of, like, like we import everything and we don't have any, it's here in Hawaii, and then we have landfills, right? And Oahu is the only waste to energy thing, but they have the volume, we don't, and we're rural. And so, yeah, that whole issue is a big one. Green waste. I chop and drop everything, so it's my mulch, and it's a simple thing to do instead of putting it, loading it up and then taking it to the green waste, which, like, I'm not even aware that the counties actually at the transfer station have a green waste separate time. I've never seen that at Honolulu. Like, I go and dumpster dive at for cardboard, for mulching underneath my chop and drop and wood chips, but it's illegal. But I usually ask the guys.
So,
Sure.
Brad, are you volunteering then to be one of the leads on this? I see that Nikki has her hand up, and so does Rhonda.
I'm willing to kind of participate, but I don't know exactly what I can do. I can share my own experience, and then, but yeah, to me, it's like, because I know a lot of local folks, they're the ones dumping, and it's a sad thing. Hey, you talk about Malama Aina, it's like, come on then, why are our gulches, full of not only green waste, we're talking about all the other waste, like cars and refrigerators and everything else. It's just really sad.
Sure.
Nikki, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm thankful for the perspective from Francine that, there is definitely things that need to be done better by the organizations that are supposed to be in charge of those things. But I wanted to just make one comment, a positive note for the county. The idea to put the days of the week on the sign by the transfer stations was amazing. I cannot believe that it took that long for them to put that. It's so easy. And that would have helped people for years, these past years that we've had these limited dumping hours and days. For years, they would just throw it someplace else because it wasn't open that day and nobody knew what day it was open. And if those little signs had simply been put up from the get-go, would have had a lot more habits formed a lot sooner. But those signs are fantastic, except for one of the dumps doesn't have the sign, just one on the coast, which is random.
Yeah. And Rhonda, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was going to suggest talking with the folks at Hāmākua Harvest, putting something into their e-newsletter. There's always something, specific to Hāmākua, anything to do with farming, green waste. I think that would be a really good audience to target.
Thank you for that. And just a thought, planning folks, from one of the comments that Brad made, that maybe something that all the action committees can kind of like keep a thought on as they're talking about different things is this interaction with the county through the website and providing that feedback to the different departments and DIT about what's working and what's not, because I think a lot of people experience the same confusion in different websites, and so it is something we probably need that civic involvement and evaluation on.
Let's bring that up at the all AC thing. That'd be a good one. So if there's nothing else, I'm gonna move on. Are you done, Heather, with that?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to follow up and join in at a later point, let me know. But so far I have Jeff and Francine, and then maybe Brad contributing a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, so item number 4, we're already at 6:45, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to do the rest of the things that we need. Item number 4 is implementation updates from action committee members. Jeff, do you want to, the first one is, on June 21st, we had that meeting with Director Kern. And since you guys were, your group was with Meishu was set that up. Do you want to report back on what your impressions were from that?
Well, I will. One of the things I was really most impressed with was the number of people from the community that attended, and I thought there was a lot of really good dialogue back and forth, and a lot of great questions were asked. And I would encourage the Planning Commission maybe to set up these type of community meetings in the future as well, because I think it was very worthwhile, and to allow the community to engage in that manner. It was kind of difficult for the Action Committee because some other members would have liked to have attended and couldn't because of the Sunshine Law. So that was a bit of an issue. So we may want to consider broadcasting it to Facebook or YouTube so that they could just watch and be informed as to what happened or what was being done. But I thought it went really well. I think Brad, you were there as well. Do you have anything?
Yeah, basically I heard, Director Kern's, support of the CDP, so that was affirming, but really for me, it was like, and I think I kind of mentioned it, well, show me, so let's, let's implement. And, he talked about the new administration being, getting out of silos. And again, my response is show me. And so, so yeah, I think, as a community action group, committee to represent is just, let's keep ourselves accountable. Let's empower our community voice and get involved. And then when we need to rattle the cages or, or ask for more input or provide more input and more accountability, then I think that's how I see it, empowering ourselves. And so, yeah, I was really encouraged, and I was grateful for all the passion and interest on behalf of our community members from across the district. So
one of the big issues that seemed to be brought up a couple of different times was filling the empty seats on the, I guess a lot of the, we have only one empty seat, but a lot of the action committees have quite a few of them. And I think the feedback we got from the community is that they'd like to see those seats filled as soon as possible so that they feel as if they're being represented.
Yeah. Okay.
I see Tanya.
Go ahead. Who's?
I agree. I think it was a very constructive meeting. I think it was mostly constructive for the community. I had heard, various rattlings over the preceding weeks regarding certain kinds of issues that the community, and I have to say a particular segment of the community seemed to be dissatisfied about. But I think the planning department came through in such a positive, strong way that the community, I think, has taken a really positive attitude now, is my reflection. I do have one comment, and that was that I had heard a week or more before the meeting that we were going to be limited to 2 action committee members at that meeting. At that point, I wrote a letter to, I believe it was the Corporation Council, who had apparently made that decision, saying that I didn't understand that because the Sunshine Law wording that I have seems to imply that there would be able to be less than a quorum of action committee members at any informational meeting. I'd like to actually read that language. It says, attendance at informational meetings or presentations. The Sunshine Law allows 2 or more members of a board, but less than a quorum to attend an informational meeting. The board members may participate in discussions, even among themselves, so long as the discussions occur as part of the informational meeting or presentation, and no commitment relating to a vote on the matter is made or sought. At the next duly noticed meeting of the board, the members who attended the informational meeting or presentation must report their attendance and the matters presented and discussed that related to official board business. So number one, we had been notified before that meeting that there was not going to be any official board business discussed. And, but nonetheless, the decision was made that there were only going to be 2 AC members allowed. And so I would like to have the planning department perhaps discuss with the corporation council again what their interpretation of this passage that I just read is, that suggests that there can only be 2 action committee members at an informational meeting.
Right, because it could have been up to 5, right? Less than quorum, so.
Yeah, if 5 is a quorum. I
6
think
is, 6
so,
is.
and 4.
Yeah.
So could we have that information at the next meeting that we have? I like the model that was established of the community coming and asking for a meeting with the planning department and the action committee. That was, to me, the real step forward in this event. And I'd hate for it to be kind of continue to be limited by, less than by only being able to have 2 action committee members present.
Yep, I can re-inquire and see. I'll check with the team to see what maybe is appropriate to re-inquire about. But we can certainly do that, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, Keiko, just the numbers, and it was just the information. We weren't going to vote on anything. So to me, it's like, again, I'm not going to harp on this, but yeah, the Sunshine Law and our committee is just, it's ridiculous.
Keiko,
I get it.
Keiko, would that be something that all the action committees would be interested in hearing, I think?
It could be.
Yep.
I'm just not sure where our influence stands on this. If the decision is made by Corporation Council, that's sort of the decision that stays. So I can kind of try to push a little bit more to see if we can get some rationale behind it. Yeah.
The decision actually is made by the Office of Information Planning or Practices at the state level. And I sent that same letter, I sent a copy of that same letter to the OIP, and their attorney also did not respond.
So let's just do what we want to do.
Not listening, Brad. No, I get it. One clarifying question. I did receive like minutes maybe from this meeting. I think Rhonda sent it to me. So I just wanted to inquire whether we wanted to officially kind of accept this as a communication, and then we could share it out. I believe they were put together by Meiju.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So does that sound good, Brad? We'll slap
Yep.
a communication number on it and, make it available to everybody.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
perfect.
More transparency, the better.
Great.
Okay. Let's see. So Heather, any reports on your working groups?
Yeah, I'll just focus on a couple since we're running late on time and I don't want to keep too long. The primary one is the emergency preparedness, which came into acute focus with the fire in Pauwilo. And it was clear that communication was problematic and maybe not as effective as could have been, and that we needed to do more in terms of getting a hazard assessment for each of the communities on the coast, and also having some preparedness measures in place, such as at a bare minimum having a neighborhood watch group in each community and a CERT team in each community. So that's what we're working on from my office at this point. Had a great conversation with April and Bethany last week about climate change and hazard mitigation and preparedness, and realized that their efforts are severely underfunded, and want to find ways to make sure that we can bring some more money into that aspect of things in terms of preparing shelters and understanding our escape routes. Sea level rise and road inundation is not as big a problem in our district, but as Bob knows, our shoreline is very unstable in some places, and so we need to understand that as well. I will be meeting with Civil Defense in 2 weeks to talk to them a little bit about strategy, about how to do these assessments. So Jeff and Francine and I are going to talk a little bit tomorrow, so they can give me some guidance about questions to ask Civil Defense, so we can get some of this moving forward. Ton, do you want to talk about your conversations at all with Kulia and the conversation we had today around the open space?
Well, yes, I think that's an opportunity. I had, actually, the community development plan specifies Policy 55 and Policy 56 perform a feasibility study on developing a scenic route from Waipio Valley Lookout extending Hāmākua to connect to mud lane at the entrance of Waimea. Improving the midsection of mud lane would provide an alternative emergency route to Kukui Highway and Waipio Valley Lookout, and would create a scenic loop between Waimea, Waipio Valley Lookout, and Hōnākā. Policy 56, perform a feasibility study on developing a scenic park accessible via mud lane with a viewing area of Hi'ilawi Falls in conjunction with development of the scenic highway. And one of the advantages of developing a scenic park with a view of Hi'ilawi Falls would be to incentivize scenic viewpoints above the valley, with the goal of minimizing visitor trips into the valley. And so, that whole section, there's so much going on in Waipio and the perimeter of Waipio. These policies emphasize that they are things that our CDP actually should probably even now begin to address. I know Heather has spent a great deal of time in addressing the problems that are being encountered by the residents in Waipio due to the visitor traffic. And all of this ties in together. My own particular interest over the years have been more toward, can we in some form or another open up the lower Cane Hall Road? Or at least, as Heather, I think, has kind of seen the same issue, perhaps at least some kind of a hiking trail that's accessible for public use along the coastline. I think, all of these things tie together. And I have the working group that I mentioned before that Heather also has been visualizing. I think that probably those issues are probably going to be one of the first things that we should try to identify. How do we approach this, all of this potential, this huge potential with the landowners, the landowners that we're going to have to work with toward a common goal. So I'm very excited about this, and I think Heather is too, and probably all of us. So I feel very fortunate to get to be working on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ton, and thanks for taking the initiative and reaching out to the folks up there at the RIM. And yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on this, and I've been working on putting some preliminary GIS mapping tools together for this working group to be able to use to help identify some locations. The only other thing I'll mention quickly is that Crystal and Rhonda and I had a brief presentation with Dennis Fleming, who is from the Hāmākua Institute, and shared with us some of the agricultural assessment. That is a link that I could probably provide to the whole group. And then we kind of left it at that. We haven't moved forward on that, but hope to reconnect with you too and get some ideas about how we can move forward. The other participant in our meeting was Jeanette Gurig from Women Organizing for Climate and Natural Resources, who's looking at really an ag innovation center somewhere on Hāmākua, specifically geared towards soil regeneration, and so therefore carbon capture, and then providing opportunities for women specifically. So wanted to tie her in with this group, and she's part of the ag hui. So there already is an existing ag hui that's been formed, and so hopefully we can kind of tap into that as well. And as for the others, we haven't really moved on yet, so need to get to work.
Okay, great. Thanks, Heather. Anybody else have anything to add as far as the committee working groups?
Quick question. Heather, I had been told, I think even it was announced at our last meeting that Dennis Fleming and the, Hāmākua Institute was going to make a presentation to the CDP. Is that?
I think that would be great. If that's something of interest to you guys, I'm sure he would be happy to do it. I think that that was a little bit of what Rhonda and Crystal and I talked about after we met with him, was that it might be a presentation worth doing to the larger group.
I think so.
If it's of interest to everybody, I'm happy to help coordinate that for, I guess that would be the September meeting. I guess that's up to you, Chair, if that's something you want to put on the agenda.
Well, we can talk about that, yeah, as far as the
Yep.
agenda for next meeting. And are there any other updates? I have just one as far as the Hākini bridge, and then we can move into the agenda for next meeting. I want to point out that it's 7:04, and I want to make sure that everybody's okay with going for a few more minutes, try and keep it short so that we stay on track pretty much. Everybody okay? Francine?
Do you mind if I leave? I appreciate that you didn't kick me off to YouTube already.
Yes, thanks for participating.
Thank you.
And Brad, I'll have to sign off at 7:15 sharp. So
Okay. All right.
if I don't get a chance to say mahalo, everyone, and thank you so much for all your contribution. Much appreciated.
Okay, so as far as any updates, anybody else have anything that they want to share? Okay, if not, yeah, as far as the Hākini issue, last meeting I reported that we had a March 31st meeting, and then we had a follow-up on April 6th to walk the site, and it has been 3 months since that. We have asked for a written response. We found out through Heather that the temporary bridge option that some of our community members had researched and actually got bids and actually had talked with the vendor that is working with the state and county. The DPW had made a decision to not pursue that option. So we asked for a written response as far as who made that decision and what the criteria was, and have had no response. And we also asked for a update on the other things because they were going to come back to us on the specifics of the site walkthrough in terms of speed humps and pull-offs and all that kind of stuff. And we have not heard. I have sent at least 2 separate emails asking for a written response. So I think at this point, pretty disappointed, and I think I'm just going to organize some sort of community request in a little bit more forceful way for a meeting, and just to let them know that we don't appreciate the no response kind of input. And we made it as easy as possible for them by having organized community subgroups and then getting the communications back out to the group both ways. And so we kind of expect that courtesy and did not get any. So I know it's a cultural kind of thing, institutional cultural at DPW, and they have not responded in a way that I think is being fit for the new administration. So anyway, we're going to just continue on and work with Heather to get some answers and a little bit more accountability, since it has been over 9 months since they closed the bridge, and we still have not heard where the contract is and what's being done. So anyway, with that being said, any agenda items, suggestions for the next meeting? The next meeting, Keiko, is the all AC one, but we're talking specifically about our Hāmākua one, right? Which will be in
September 15.
September 15th, yeah.
And if there's no suggestions tonight, we're going to go through the regular process of reaching out to everybody, asking for suggestions, ideas that they have around agenda items.
Yeah.
So no pressure to get it all out tonight.
Okay. And then feel free to, if stuff comes up, to reach out to both Keiko folks and Alexis and Jeff and I, and we'll make sure that it gets on. So, it can be, we can do that up until the whatever the deadline is for the posting of the upcoming meeting. All right. Does anybody have anything else? Otherwise, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
I have a quick comment. I had mentioned that as the Trails and Access Committee, we were looking at forming a working group. I'm pretty familiar with the Hāmākua section. I have very little familiarity with the issues of trails and access in the North Hilo area. I think, for a working group of whatever size, we would like to have recommendations, I think, from any of you action committee members of people that you think might have a interest in serving on a committee, a working group like that. So please, if you do have ideas or recommendations, let myself or Jeff or Heather know, and we can try to get as representative a group as possible.
Okay. All righty. Anybody else? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our action committee meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn our meeting today.
Second.
Okay, so it's been a motion by Nikki and second by Jeff. All in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? All right, so again, thank you everyone for participating, and we shall be in touch.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Mahalo.
Have a great night.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mahalo. Mahalo.